Hi, everybody. Welcome to the cdCon Spinnaker Summit 2021 recap with OpsMx. My name is Mark Levy. I work on product marketing at OpsMx. I got two experts here today going to focus on opportunities and best practices with Spinnaker. Let me introduce the two experts for today's session. First, we have Balaji Siva, Head of Products at OpsMx. How are you doing today, Balaji?
Hey Mark, how are you doing? I'm doing good, thank you.
All right, and we also have Gopi Rampala, who is the CTO of OpsMx. Gopi, how are you?
Very good for you, Mark.
Well, greetings, gentlemen. Today we're going to discuss three things. First, let's do a recap on cdCon Spinnaker Summit 2021. What are the big trends that you saw? What's the main news this year? Next, and in this discussion, let's look at the current challenges that Spinnaker users are really trying to address. You probably saw a lot of that at the conference. And then, of course, we'd love to present the viewers best practices in Spinnaker. So, Balaji, why don't you open up and how'd you like the cdCon and Spinnaker Summit?
Actually, I loved it because the virtual conference, right? It's actually more efficient. You're able to go between sessions. I remember in a physical conference, going between sessions is impossible, right? You have to go find the next room. Where is the room? And maybe there's a long line, and maybe there's no place to sit down to listen to the talk. It's actually a complete mess, in the real world. In the virtual world, actually was very good. The Q&A is easy to hear, easy to see what the response is. I thought the presentation was the pre-recorded versions. The presentation was great because the author can actually, the speaker can actually comment while the session is going on, without being disrupted. So I think it was a great model. I like that. Hopefully in the future, there's a hybrid way of doing things, right? People don't have to always go in person.
You can also have your coffee at the same time, right? And watch the session.
You can do whatever you want. Exactly. It can be in your shorts or something. You don't have to be,
Let's be careful there. So, give me your idea. What'd you see? What are the trends? What are some of the things that you saw?
Yeah. So, obviously I was able to catch some of the sessions, not all of them, but I saw that recurring theme, at least in the Spinnaker Summit, and even in the other general CD sessions, is around basically people are struggling with sort of velocity and governance, right? People want to be able to enforce rules and regulations, but velocity is obviously a problem, right? I want to do something quick, and be able to do it, but then there's also real issues, things to verify actually before you can deploy to production. So I've seen 3-4 sessions actually talk about having policy as part of the pipelines, as part of the process. So I think is a huge opportunity, a huge trend that's happening. Is people want to be able to automate some of these human elements of decisioning in the pipeline. So that's one point I saw. The second thing was around GitOps. Obviously they had a whole summit on GitOps, right? Essentially, ability to, what is GitOps? Ability to maintain your intended state of your application in a Git and version control it and manage it, and then be able to automatically deploy it to the Kubernetes cluster. And that's definitely a popular topic. That's getting some momentum with the Argo project and other things out there. Even Spinnaker, we can do GitOps way of deploying things, maintaining pipelines and templates in Git and having it automatically updated. So that's a trend that I see people want to do it. And the third point is around verification. I've seen a couple of sessions where there was talk about using machine learning or some sort of automated verification for deploying during deployment of Canary or Blue, Green, etc. So basically, think of this sort of emerging trend around, I want to be able to automate all aspects of CD. One of the things, delivery of software, one of the things that sort of people still do manually is do manual verification of like these deployments. They do have some scripts to do like threshold checking for these doing the rollout. But I think having a holistic way of doing machine learning and other methods to look at verifying new releases is a trend. It's happening. And the last point is around security and traceability, basically, auditability and traceability. I saw a few sessions around how do you trace the artifact through the whole process, and also a need for verifying who deployed what and those kind of things during the process. Without security, deploying fast is not going to get you anywhere, right? You're going to have big problems. So I think I see that people are moving away from sort of like I see it as a Maslow hierarchy of problems, right? Before, people couldn't automate anything. So now they're, okay, now I got automated. Now I got to go to the next set of problems to solve. I think one of the sessions I did with Anil from Cisco was around, okay, they already done scale deployment of Spinnaker, for example. Now they started having these other sort of challenges. So if I missed that session, go listen to it. And we talk about like 5 to 6 sort of needs at scale. And that's sort of where people are getting to. They sort of solved the base problem. Now they're trying to solve the rest of the problems. That's all I saw. I guess hopefully that was useful to Mark or the rest of the community.
Yeah. Well, I think the Maslow analogy is pretty interesting because it's sort of like the theory of constraints, right? You solve one thing and another one opens up. But this idea of like integrating policies, they've gone through sort of deploying the bits, automating the bits, but now the manual interventions and the gates and the policies, all those things are the next order that needs to be solved, right? Gopi, what are your thoughts on some of what Balaji
That's exactly right.
And your own?
A lot of the conference, there's lots of good content, a lot of people. So we've seen some of the challenges, how people are solving them. And as Balaji mentioned, velocity is the key that we are trying to achieve. If somebody checks in the code, can we take it all the way to the production in a very short time without anybody touching it and have it working flawlessly, right? So to achieve that, of course, there are a lot of challenges. And as Balaji said, there are a few pieces that are automated. Spinnaker is a great tool. And we saw some of those companies that are using Spinnaker to deliver their software. But some of the themes that we see people trying to solve still are with respect to that SecOps, right? DevSecOps. Now there is a huge success in DevOps. And how do you bring security as part of the delivery itself? Balaji touched on a few things like policy and compliance. So basically, how do you trace what you're delivering? Can you provide enterprise policies along with your security checks as part of this delivery? So those were the themes that came out. And the second big one, of course, is the GitOps that has taken big strides. When we were doing the infrastructure delivery with GitOps, that was a good fit. Now with Kubernetes, the GitOps application delivery is also a good fit. And we saw a lot of trends using that, but there are challenges in that. And we saw some of the talks on how do you incorporate GitOps with security. There's more issues that come out as part of that GitOps process in terms of security and checks. And those were some of the talks we saw. And the last one I thought it was interesting was this interoperability part of it. There are so many tools in the enterprise today that we use, right? For the testing, for security checks, ITSM processes, and then you have your deployment tools, delivery tools. So can we have all of these working together? How do you, instead of making huge amount of investment in custom scripts in getting this going, can you have some kind of models that will allow this interoperability better, making it easier for enterprises to do DevSecOps, for example? So those were the three themes that seemed like big ones during the sessions this year.
So the last one, this whole interoperability, what are your thoughts there on how do you do that? You know.
Yeah, so that is a big theme. We currently don't have standards in how the tools generate events or react to events. So there are a couple of SIGs even in the cdCon that we saw which work towards the interoperability and events. And as OpsMx, we also are very interested in this problem as we are trying to solve visibility across the entire delivery process. So there are these standards in terms of how we generate these events or what is the structure of these events, and in how do you trace across an artifact that's being passed through. So with these standards and some of the techniques that we generate as a platform, will make it easier. So you can check out what we are doing and also look at the SIGs with the CD events and the CD interoperability. There are two of these SIGs to see what industry is doing and what we are doing there.
So it seems like both of you a lot, is, I think that totally aligned on the goal, right, is to go fast. But you both sort of brought up, and it seemed like a main theme, this whole idea of, well, in order to go fast, you have, these there's many other constraints that we need to solve. It's much more than automating the bits, the deployment of the bits, But you both talked about GetOps, and so Balaji, what are your thoughts on, is there, you mentioned sort of this level of priority, how to, and I come back to, and I mentioned this earlier before we started recording, they had a keynote where they asked, like, what is the vision a CI/CD team should aspire for? And the speaker said, well, they should, a developer should be able to, commit a change, and a few minutes later it's in production. And the speaker said, without any gates or, any manual intervention and things like that. And just going through my head is, well, maybe there are gates, maybe, but maybe, they need to be automated, right? Or, maybe, can you sort of like, there's a lot more to it that goes on in the pipeline in a lot of ways than even sometimes developers even know or should care about, right? What's your thoughts on that?
Exactly. Yeah, I remember the conversations that we were trying to hire one of those sales engineers, and she was saying, "Oh, CI/CD is a button, right? You just click and it just works, right?" So really, it should be what it should be as far as the end user is concerned. That's how you want the experience to be, right? You want the developer to not even see the sort of how the sausage is made in the factory, right? You want to keep them out of this. But at the end of the day, that's a wishful thinking to say, okay, there is no checking of anything. That may be possible in a small organization, but in a regulated industries like healthcare or financials or other places, there are a lot of regulations that you cannot even do that business-wise. It's illegal to do that. So there's SOX compliance. There's many other compliance that you have to follow through. So I think, Mark, I agree with you that while the intention may be that we want to get things faster and actually almost seamlessly have no obvious gates, right? That's definitely true, because if you look at some of the companies you work with, for SOX compliance check, they open up a ticket in ServiceNow and they take the guy who's supposed to approve it. He's on a PTO, a long weekend right now, right? He's gone. So he comes back Tuesday and then approves the ticket. I mean, unfortunately, that's just 4 days of nothingness. Those kind of things would obviously make the developer very unhappy, because you want to get it done and move on rather than wait for 4 days to do it. So I completely agree that this policy model policy desire that we have seen across different people already, that's essentially what it's trying to do. Essentially is trying to automate some of those things in the back end, right? So that there's no manual checks, ticketing. The developers are not visible to that. but the same, nobody's going to allow anything to go without any gates or without any checking. So
that's exactly right. So a goal is to be able to remove all of these manual interventions in between, but the gates do exist. Whether we are doing a compliance check or functionality testing with the automated tests, or at the deployment time, you're doing progressive deployments like a canary and checking whether that deployment is working well, and then progressively moving into the production. We are trying to do zero downtime deployments here. And so at each of these stages, there are of these checks that are happening. That is part of what we were discussing about interoperability also. How easy can you make these tools that do these checks integrate with your workflow? Like the Spinnaker is a great tool for automation workflows. And then you can extend these stages, but if you have to extend them for each and every tool in its own way, then that becomes a technical debt that you have to manage. So those are the kind of things that we want to solve. And even at the deployment time, Balaji mentioned he did a session on automated verification. So you want to have the tools that support progressive delivery, and during that automatically check the viability, both in terms of functionality as the performance of that system, and then allow it automatically move to production. The DevOps is a great way where the developer who pushes the code in is responsible for making sure in the operations that it is functioning correctly, or the group itself. So that model kind of works, but the gates have to be there for us to have a secure, functioning, reliable system that gets deployed in production with zero downtimes.
Now, and is that, so it's not aspirational, it is possible. Are there examples, Balaji? You mentioned Cisco, people doing this kind of stuff. Because you come back, what was interesting too is they released a survey from Slashdata and cdCon, and they said from this developer survey, only 1 in 10 developers are considered elite in terms of deployments, meaning that from their survey, only 1 in 10 deploy multiple times a day. And so I'm trying to connect the dots between what's aspirational and what's current state, and maybe what are some of the inhibitors. But it is, to you, Balaji, you mentioned, is that vision a reality? Can that be a reality today?
I think there's a lot of frictions. Maybe there's, we can talk about maybe some other parts of this conversation. And a lot of friction to getting applications to production. So one is obviously the initial onboarding of the application itself, developers and application, the tools, etc. Let's assume that's not what we're going to talk about in this section. It's okay. I've already set it up. Right now, it's about having the next release or next update go through faster, right? And so let's assume that's the case. So, like Gopi pointed out, you have all these tools, like the build tools, the source code analysis tools, other tools that are doing these automated checks, right? But then somebody has to verify that those results from that is valid, or is it secure? Is it has anything that violates our policy, right? For example, SOX compliance is people who made the code commit, who did the pull request, cannot be the one who merges the code also into the branch. Meaning basically I can put a bad code in there and I merge also, that basically violates the thing. So there are a lot of things that means that somebody has to check that. If you have to do manual check on every merge commit, does it actually follow the SOX compliance, then it will be a long day, right? So having the ability to read data from these external tools, like in that one particular case was a GitLab, right? They're using GitLab for source code. Ability to do that, is an important aspects of it. It is possible. Obviously, we have done it, right? We have done it, as you mentioned, in customers. We have done it where we're able to take data from multiple tools that are connecting to the CI/CD tool, for example, and be able to act on data and able to automate those checks for you, so that the developer, even if there's a human involved, he has all the information already done for him. So he doesn't have to go through and check every merge, whether it does matches SOX or not. Everything is done for you. So when they come in, okay, it looks like it passes SOX compliance, boom. So you may just have to still click a button, for example, if you like, but at least that all the hard work of figuring it out is all done for you. And that was just one example. There are lots of tools in the ecosystem. Everybody uses something different, Aquasec or JFrog Artifactory or SonarQube, Checkmark, so many names that we are working with right now that that makes what's difficult, but it's doable. We have done it. So I think for what it's worth. And I think, so it is definitely doable. I think we are still a work in progress. People still want to have this manual check, as I said before. They still want the human to click yes, but at least their work is done for them.
So look, let's transition here and leave the viewers with maybe some best practices, on this. Maybe Gopi, why don't you give some ideas on, what are some of the things that, specifically Spinnaker users, can do to help this interoperability, implement, shift left security, integrate policy. What are some of the things that these people need to be thinking about?
Typically, when we go to our customers, one of the first things that we do is go through their current workflow process. What are they doing? Where are the handover processes that they have? Where the bottlenecks are? And with our product, we have a large number of these integrations done in the industry. So we know how to automate this without huge amount of custom effort that needs to happen. So essentially, the first step is to find out where your bottlenecks are, automate that workflow, and remove those initial barriers, and then introduce that to your developer ecosystem and organically. You don't want to force any of the changes onto the developers, right, or your operations. Introduce that, find all the kinks, and once those things are resolved, then implement it enterprise-wide, like Balaji said, make it simple for onboarding. Introduce these policy systems that are easy to integrate with their workflow. Have this automated analysis, then add it to what their deployment workflow and progressive deployment, and everything comes together for them to go end to end. And usually it is all self-service. You want to make it a self-service for the enterprises for them to adopt. And so there's a progression. You can start with identifying where the bottlenecks are and then introduce it for enterprise-wide.
Great. Balaji, your thoughts? Best practices? What do you want to leave people with?
Yeah, I mean, I think, templatize pipelines, templatize those things so that you have and enforce compliance of those pipelines, so that people are not, creating variations that's difficult to track and maintain, etc. So, enable these policy checks, even for pipeline changes, for example, right? Some of the things you could do is prevent people from modifying the pipeline in a way that is not compliant with the policy. So that keeps the whole system fairly intact. The other thing I would say is around policy, make it easy for people to be compliant with something. For example, we have a model where you could tag a policy as SOX compliant, right? And if an application needs to be SOX compliant, all you have to do is to apply SOX compliant to the pipeline. So that the user developer does not have to understand what are the different policy names. They don't have to worry about anything else. They just apply with a tag, right? Or anybody could check, hey, did this thing go through SOX? All they have to do is check if that SOX tagged pipelines, policies are as part of that pipeline check. That's it. They don't have to know the details, right? I mean, SOX is obviously easier to understand maybe compared to maybe HIPAA or other kinds of FedRAMP and whatever the different things are there. So we can have an easy way to people to, I think Gopi pointed out, self-service. Essentially, I'm saying is instead of making people to create these policies, let them just get it right off the bat, right? Make it as easy to consume. And then I would say is that I think provide a visibility and monitoring traceability for everybody, right? So people can see what's going on. I think one of the key things that's been a problem with sort of the older CI/CD tool is nobody knows what happened, right? Meaning you figured out, it triggered off a script and you don't know whether it got deployed, whether it got rolled back, what's happening to the thing, what's happening. So having basically what I'm calling observability of the whole application across different environments, across the past and the future and the present, whatever you want to call it, so people can feel comfortable with what's happening. And I think one of the cool benefits of GitOps model is that, let's say I want to start a new application to production, I can just copy the Git file and just boom, you're done. Right? Basically, I know this application is in production, it works fine. If I want to maybe just change the image name, right? Boom, and that's it. Now my sort of application can also be in production because I've basically followed something else that's all in production. So essentially, it's a way to do that would be nice. Those are some of the things I would think of, is try to standardize, try to make it easier for developers to adopt some of these things. Then only they will do it, right? If you, as you pointed out, if it's too much of a ceremonious release or ceremonious process, they don't want to do that. As far as they're concerned, I'm already doing coding. I don't want you to go through end issues to make this work. So make that easy for them.
Make it easy. That's it. But behind the scenes, there, let software do the hard work, right? Not people.
Yeah. I think that's why platform like the OpsMx Enterprise is a good for large customers that are adopting it, because we kind solve that hard problems in the back end and let them focus on sort of really making the self-service enabled for their developers.
Well, great stuff, gentlemen. Thank you so much. It was a great event. I am glad you guys were able to contribute to the event and really some good insights and best practices. Thanks everybody for listening, and we'll see you later. See you guys.
Thanks everyone.
See you.
Thank
Thanks,
you, Mark.
Thanks, Bobby. See you. Bye-bye.